Please turn in your Bibles to the book of John, chapter 13. John, chapter 13. Today I'm going to be reading from the New International Version. I want to begin by telling you that I am so excited to be here today. Is anyone else excited to be here? Amen. Well, I am especially excited to be here today because last week I was here in the service, but I wasn't here in the pulpit. I was sitting right there on the front row, and I enjoyed getting to sit with Christina, but instead of me preaching, we got to hear from our youth pastor, Jesse, and I've got to tell you right now, I did not like it. Now, hold on a minute. Give me a second. Let me defend myself. It's not that I didn't like it because Jesse was preaching. It's that I didn't like it because I wasn't preaching. And I have learned that I love to preach. And bringing me to church and not letting me preach is like taking a child to Disney World and telling him he has to watch the other kids ride the rides. So I do appreciate Jesse, and I'm thankful for him doing what he did last week and sharing his heart with us. And you can definitely tell when someone's passionate about what they're saying. Amen? I hope that today that I can communicate with that same level of passion, because this morning I have a message. We're actually starting a series that is so important for Christians to hear, understand, and apply to their lives. Today we're starting a series called This is Love. This is love. And today specifically we're actually talking about why we love. I want us to begin by doing probably the most important thing that we can do when we come together as a body, and that is reading the Word of God. Because I can stand up here and I can talk for 30 or 40 or 70 minutes, and I can tell you all of my opinions, and it's not going to do a bit of good. But the Bible tells us that if I stand up here for 5 minutes and read the Word of God, that it won't return void. Amen? So we're going to read the Word of God. I feel like that's important. We're going to start in John chapter 13. And in this passage, what we have is an account of the last meal that Jesus had with his disciples before he was betrayed, arrested, tried, and eventually crucified. On that night, during the meal, Jesus did something that totally perplexed his disciples. And I want us to read about what he did in John chapter 13, verses 1 through 5. It says, "It was just before the Passover festival, and Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God." Then in verses 4 and 5, it says, "So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him." Church, can I take just a couple of minutes to teach you a little bit? You see, Jesus didn't just decide one day to get up and wash everyone's feet. He didn't just decide, you know what, I think I'm going to wash people's feet. Because back then, everyone wore sandals. And they walked pretty much everywhere they went. They walked through mud, and they walked through dirt, and they walked through dust. And they walked, and they got their feet really, really dirty. And when a person came into a house, if they didn't wash their feet, they would track that mud and that dirt and that dust into the house and all over the house. It reminds me of my dog, Ben. It's been a while since I've got to tell you about Ben, so I'm going to talk about him. I love my dog. I got him for my birthday a couple years ago. His name's Ben. He's a full-blooded German Shepherd, and he's one of my best friends in the world. He hardly ever talks back to me. But Ben spends a lot of time out in the backyard running back and forth along the fence row, chasing the neighbor's dogs. So they're on the other side, he's on this side, and he'll run back and forth chasing those dogs. And I got to be honest with you, I don't think that grass will ever grow back along the path that he runs. I think it's a lost cause. But because he spends so much time out there running back and forth in that dirt path, he gets a lot of dirt and dust and sometimes even mud on him. So when the time comes for him to come in the house, he brings a lot of that dirt and dust in with him. And we have hard floors, kind of like this. We have hard floors. So if we don't sweep every single day, I mean, we would live in a total dust cloud. I was actually talking to Christina just yesterday. I said, we need to get one of those little robot vacuums and just have that thing running around the house all the time, just cleaning up after Ben's dust. But because of the sandals and the dust and the dirt and the grime, it was customary in Jesus' day to have a large basin or a large bowl of water at the entryway to a house so that guests could wash their feet. It was just customary. And if you were wealthy, if you had servants, then you would actually have servants whose job it was to wash the feet of your guests. When they came in, the servants would wash their feet, and then they would come into your house and go about their business, do whatever they were going to do. That was a common thing. So what Jesus did in this story was he took the place of a servant in washing the feet of the disciples. This is also why I'm not a really big fan of feet washing services in church. Have you guys ever been part of a feet washing service? Man, they're just miserable. I mean, I'm not a big fan of them because that's not something we do today. Most of us don't have a large basin of water at our front door so that people can wash their feet when they come in the house. When I was in junior high ministry, I thought that would have been a good idea. But most of us don't have that. And most of us, even the wealthiest, the people who have maids and butlers, they don't have maids and butlers wash the feet of their guests. It's not something that we do. So I understand it in the context of a service. If you're trying to show honor or show servanthood, I understand the concept of a feet washing service, but it doesn't carry with it the same message of what Jesus was doing. You'd be better off to give the person a back rub or to fix them a meal or to do something along those lines. But again, in Jesus' day, this was very common. But what wasn't common was for someone like Jesus, someone of Jesus' stature, Jesus' position, to do that for his disciples. In fact, if anything, it would be proper and appropriate for them to do it for him, not the other way around. In fact, the next few verses of this chapter, we're not going to read them, but the next few verses tell us that Peter actually objected to what Jesus was doing. He said, Jesus, are you trying to wash my feet? And Jesus said, yeah, I'm going to wash your feet. And Peter said, Jesus, you will never wash my feet. Never. Well, Jesus told Peter, he said, listen, I know that you don't understand what's going on right now, but you will in the future. And he convinced Peter to let him finish what he had started. So Jesus washes all of the disciples' feet. And then I want us to jump back into the word, picking up in verse 12 to see what happened next. It says, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes. In other words, he put on his overcoat, and he returned to his place at the table. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Verse 17, he says, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. He gets done washing their feet, and he says, do you understand what I've done for you? Do you get it? Do you understand what I've done? He says, you call me teacher and Lord. And he says, rightfully so. You should call me those things because I am those things. Now, church, you need to understand that the words that are translated here as teacher and Lord, they carried with them a great deal of honor and respect. In fact, the word that is translated here as teacher is translated in the King James Version as master. You call me Master and Lord. The word that is translated here as Lord meant supreme authority. Supreme authority. These are words that were reserved for the most respected individuals in education, in government, and in religion. Jesus said, you refer to me as teacher, as master, as Lord. You refer to me with great respect, and rightfully you should, because that's what I deserve. And then he says, now that I, your Lord and teacher, he uses the same words. Now that I, your master, your supreme authority, have done this for you, you should do it for others. He says, now that I, the guy that deserves the most respect in the room, have lowered myself to the position of serving you in this way, you should serve other people. He says, do you understand what I've done? I've set an example for you. He goes on to say that no servant is greater than his master. No servant is greater than his master, and no messenger is greater than the one who sent him. See, he's their master. He's the one who's sending them out. He's saying, you're not greater than me in any way, shape, or form. So if I can do this, so should you. Jesus taught us so much in that moment about leadership. But he also taught us about love. Now, this was an important lesson for the disciples to learn. Because just a few days earlier, if you read back earlier in the book, Jesus caught the disciples arguing about who was the greatest in the kingdom of God. They were comparing their cards. Have you ever traded baseball cards? Anyone ever collect baseball cards and on the back, they have all the stats for every year? Well, they were comparing their baseball cards. They're like, well, I did this. I healed this guy. You remember that? You guys remember when I healed that guy? You guys remember when I healed this lady when I prayed for her? And you guys remember? And they were comparing their resumes to see who was the most important, who was the greatest in the kingdom of God. And then, not long after that, two of the disciples, James and John, they were brothers. They were actually related to Jesus. They came to Jesus and they said, hey, when you set up your kingdom, can we sit at your right and your left? Can we sit at the places of honor? You see, the disciples were kind of in it for the wrong reason. So it was important for Jesus, before he left them, to teach them one last time that they were not in this to be rulers. They were in it to serve. They weren't called to lead. They were called to serve. That is why Jesus washed his disciples' feet that day. After this, they went back to the table. The meal continued. Jesus ends up telling them that one of the disciples will betray him. He tells Judas Iscariot, who's going to betray him, to go do what you have to do. The disciples don't get it. They think that maybe he's going to buy food or to serve the poor or to do something like that. Jesus is telling them, go on, go betray me. You know what you got to do. Go do it. Judas leaves. And then Jesus tells his disciples that I'm not going to be with you much longer. I'm not going to be around much longer. Soon I'm going to go away. And then in verses 34 and 35, Jesus does something completely radical. Something that only Jesus could do. I want us to look at those verses together. John 13, verses 34 and 35. Jesus says, a new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know you are my disciples, if you love one another. Today we're talking about love. And specifically, we're talking about why we love. But before we get into the why, I really think it's important to spend just a few moments telling you what love is. Because you see, depending on who you ask, there are somewhere between 4 and 8 words in the Greek language that are translated as the English word love. There's all different words, and they all mean different things. So, for example, phileo It actually means brotherly love. It's where the word Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, comes from. There's a word eros that means erotic or sexual love. There's a word for the love between a parent and their children. There are all these different words for love. And the word that is used here in this passage where Jesus says, a new command I give you, love one another, is the word agapao. Everybody say agapao. Agapao. Who knows what that word means? Most people don't. In fact, most people who think they do don't, because the truth is nobody knows what that word means, because it's not a real word. It's not a real Greek word. It's a word that was made up. Now, when you look at the context that agapao is used in, all throughout the Bible, all throughout the New Testament rather, when you look at the context in which it's used, most scholars believe that agapao is a form of the word agape. Agape is a real Greek word. And agape means a self-sacrificing love. It is a love that is unconditional, and it is self-sacrificing, and it is a love that prefers the recipient over the giver. Agape means preferring the well-being and the enjoyment of the person receiving the love over the person who's giving the love. Agape is when there's only one slice of pizza left, and there's two of you. And it's when you say, you go ahead, you have that, and actually mean it. That's agape love. But there's a very important difference between agape and agapao in the way that they're used in the Word of God. You see, agape is a noun. Who remembers from elementary school what a noun is? Randy raised his hand. Randy cheated because he went to third grade 4 times. A noun is a person, place, or thing. It's a person, place, or thing. But to have a sentence, you have to have more than a noun. See, if I were to say Christina, well, I mean, that's a sentence right there. But it's not, because it's just a noun. And to have a complete sentence, you have to have at least 2 things. Now, sometimes you have to have all sorts of other things. But you have to have at least 2 things to make a sentence. A noun, and who knows what the other one is? A verb. See, a verb is the action taken by a noun. If I said, the plane flew, plane is a noun. The action that was taken by that plane is flying. Flew. That's the verb. Now, some of y'all are real confused right now, and that's all right. I know it's been a long time. Others of you are like, I know this. Why is he testing me? Well, I'm going to test you in just a second here. In fact, we're going to have a pop quiz right now. Here's what we're going to do. I am going to give you a word, and I want you to, as quickly as you can, yell out as loudly as you can. I want the kids in the other room to hear you. They're always screaming, bothering us, so we're going to bother them for a minute. So I'm going to give you a word. I want you to scream out noun or verb. And if you're online, you can play too. I don't want you to have to type it out because you'll get behind, so just type N, enter, or V, enter for noun and verb. Ready? Here we go. Is everybody ready? Cow. All right, cow is a noun. Ran. Verb. Not ram, ran. It's like the cow ran. So the cow's the noun, ran is the verb. Very good. Here we go. Chicken. Very good. Swam. Very good. Car. Rolled. Very good. Love. Yeah. See, I almost got some of you there. I almost got some of you. Love can be both a noun, like the love that you all have for me, or it can be a verb, like you love those shoes. Now, let's not get into the fact that love shouldn't be applied to something as menial as shoes, but you get the point. Agape is a noun. But the word that Jesus used here, agapao, is a verb. That's important because a verb requires action. So when Jesus says love one another, he's not saying just have this warm, fuzzy feeling for other people. He's saying do something. Take action. That's the whole reason that Jesus washed his disciples' feet. He was showing them how to love. He was showing them what agapao looked like. He was showing them what it looked like to take love, self-sacrificial love, and to put it into action. He was showing them how to prefer the well-being of the recipient over his own well-being. So as we go through the rest of today's message in the next few weeks, I want you to keep that in mind, that the what of love is sacrificially choosing to put others above yourself and to do something for them. But today we're actually talking about the why of love. We're talking about why we love. And the why of love is found in verses 34 and 35 of John chapter 13. I'm going to read those again. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Jesus starts by saying, a new command I give you. Church, you need to understand that what he actually meant there was a new commandment I give you. You guys are familiar with the 10 Commandments, right? This is number 11. The only person that could have made another commandment is Jesus. And this commandment to love one another carries with it the same weight as the 10 Commandments that were written in stone by the very hand of God. It's the 11th commandment. This wasn't something that Jesus was just recommending that the disciples should think about doing. It wasn't just some advice he was giving them. This was a command. And this command is the first reason why we love. The reason we love is because Jesus told us to. Did anyone else hate it when you were younger and you would ask your parents, or they would tell you to do something and you'd say, why? And they'd say, because I said so. I hated that. Still hate it. Christina does it. I still hate it. But here's the thing. If you hated that when your parents did that, I got to tell you something. Your parents weren't God. And neither were mine. And as much as I love her, neither is Christina. When God says to do something, we better do it. We must obey. And that doesn't just go for God the Father. That goes for God the Son, Jesus Christ. It goes for the Holy Spirit. When God tells you to do something, you have to do it. Jesus told the disciples a lot of things that they should or should not do. In the time that he spent with them, he told them a lot of things that they should or should not do. But this one time, and really this only one time, did he say, I'm giving you this commandment. He wanted them to know that this was really important. The first reason why we love is because Jesus told us to. The second reason is because Jesus loved us. You see, the disciples didn't even realize it yet, but Jesus chose to give up his rightful place in heaven. He chose to come down and live a life in this wonderful and terrible world that we live in. He chose to be betrayed by one of his closest confidants. He chose to be brutally beaten and to be hung on a cross, to be humiliated by the whole world. And worse than all of that, he chose to take on the weight and the burden and the shame of our sin on his very shoulders and his very soul. He chose to go through that punishment of being separated from God when God turned his back on him. Jesus chose all of that. Jesus loved, agapao, us. He put his love into action. He sacrificed his own enjoyment, his own well-being for the betterment of us. And knowing all that he had given up and all that he would soon face, knowing the depths of his sacrificial love for us, Jesus said, as I have loved you, as I have done this for you, as I have taken the weight of your sin on my shoulders, as I have been sacrificial with my love, so you should love one another. See, he wasn't even just talking about the fact that he had washed their feet and shown love. He had talked about all that he had done and was doing for them. This is a message that John really got. John has the only record of this conversation of any of the Gospels. John wrote this down. He really got this conversation. He really got the message of this, that Jesus loved us. You might be familiar with a little verse called John 3:16. You remember that one? Well, that was written by John. And it said, for God so loved, agapao, the world, that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. John got the fact that Jesus loved us. And then in 1 John 4:19, he wrote this, we love, agapao, we love because he first loved us. We love because Jesus loved us. The second reason why we love in our actions other people is because Jesus loved in his actions us. And let's not forget that we didn't deserve it. You see, Jesus didn't choose to sacrificially give himself up for the refined holy saints that sit before me today. He did it for the terrible, depraved people that you used to be. I've told you guys this before, but my favorite verse in the Bible, I don't know if we're allowed to have favorites, but I do. It's kind of like with your kids. You're not supposed to have a favorite, but we all got a favorite. Romans 5:8 says this, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. See, God demonstrates his agape love. God demonstrates his self-sacrificing, preferring us over him love in this way, that while we were still terrible, disgusting people who didn't know him or care to, he chose to send his Son to die for us. The second reason why we love other people is because Christ loved us first. We love because Jesus told us. We love because Jesus showed us. And finally, we love because that's how we show Jesus to the world. In verse 35, Jesus says, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Church, can we just dwell on that statement alone for a second? On how meaningful that statement is. Jesus said that self-sacrificial agapao love was so rare that it would be so out of the ordinary that if you did it, people would know that you were his disciple. And I don't want to put words into his mouth or twist his words in any way, but I think that it would be valid to say this. If that is the indicator to the world that we're his disciples, if they're going to look at us and see us loving other people, and when they see that, they're going to know that we're different, that we're a follower of his, then I think you could also say, when they see that you don't, then they also know that you're not. This is how we show Jesus to the world. You see, church, the beauty of self-sacrificing agapao love, the beauty of us putting others before ourselves and putting that into action and actually doing something for other people, is that it doesn't ever point people to us. It always points people to God. Let me give you an example, and this is a silly example, but it's an example nonetheless. Next Saturday morning at 11 a.m., more than likely, my Arkansas Razorbacks are going to be playing football against Alabama. I would love to watch that game. But instead, I'm going to be busy agapao. I'm going to be busy loving other people. I'm going to be down in Fayetteville, and I'm going to be loving on some people who are going through, many of them, the worst time of their life. Guys, I got to tell you, it's really interesting doing this homeless ministry. Some of the people, you can tell, like, they've been living that life for a long time. In fact, they've got kind of a community. I mean, we saw somebody, he was talking to another person. He said, man, I haven't seen you in a long time. Where have you been? And the guy said, man, I was in the hospital for 3 days last week. But they knew one another. Another one, this guy and this girl were talking, and she said, well, what are you going to do? And he said, well, I'm going to go down. He said, I think I'm going to go sleep under that bridge tonight. There's some people that were in it. They've been in that life for a long time, and that's heartbreaking. But I'll tell you what was really heartbreaking was the young lady that came up, and I could tell that she hadn't been living this life for long at all. Because she was scared, and she was timid. And you could just, I mean, it broke my heart. You could see it on her face. So next week, instead of watching the Hogs play at 11 o'clock, I'm going to be down there, and I'm going to be handing out some food and handing out some clothes. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to be doing anything spectacular. I'm not doing anything awesome. I mean, last time I told you what I did. I scooped up 9 gallons of chili into little bowls. Just scoop, hand, scoop. I mean, that's all I did the whole day. That's nothing huge. The chili wasn't even that good. But when I do that next week, none of those people are going to know my name. They're not going to know that I'm the pastor of CenterPoint Church. I'm not even going to wear a CenterPoint Church shirt. I'm going to wear an Arkansas Razorback shirt because it's game day. But even if it wasn't game day, I wouldn't wear a CenterPoint Church shirt because my goal is not to point people to CenterPoint Church. My goal is not to point people to Brian Clark. My goal is to point people to a God who loves them and who can change their situation. And that's agapao. When we do things, when we give up the little or big things that we enjoy, and we choose to sacrifice our own well-being or enjoyment for the well-being or enjoyment of other people. And sometimes it's big things, and sometimes it's little things. Sometimes it's just showing up here at 7 o'clock in the morning and setting up a church so that we can have a service. Guys, this morning, some of you, there were, 6 of us. I think there were 6 or 7 of us here this morning at 7 a.m. setting this up. You're like, you did all that with 7 people? Yeah, we did. It'd be great if we had 12. I would love it. But you know what? We were able to do it. But for those people who woke up at 5:30 a.m. on a Sunday, even though they worked all week long, some of them didn't. Some of them didn't work all week long. But, I mean, those people that chose on a Sunday when they didn't have to wake up at 5:30 and come in and serve, that's agapao. That's just love. The beauty of self-sacrificing love is that it doesn't point people to us. It points people to God. It's bigger than us. We talked a few weeks ago about how Jesus told us in Matthew 5:16, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. That they may see your good deeds. They may see the things that you do. They may see your agapao, and that will glorify not you, but God. We love because it identifies us as followers of Christ and points the world to Him. Church, this is what love is. Sacrificial agapao love. And this is why we do it. Because Jesus told us to. Because Jesus showed us how. And because it's how we show Jesus to the world. I'm going to ask everyone in the room to bow your head and close your eyes. The first question I have for you today is very simple. I made reference today to the fact that Jesus made a decision to give up His rightful place in heaven. And in doing so, to come down and bear the weight of our sin so that we could have a relationship with God. Today, there's a chance that you're here, whether it's in the room or on the live stream, and you don't have a relationship with God, but you want to. If that's you today, I want to give you the opportunity to change your life forever, to give your life to Him. If you say, Pastor, I don't know Jesus, but I want to. I want you right where you're at to lift up your hand. And if you're on the live stream, I want you to type in the chat box, that's me. We've got staff who are watching that right now, and they're going to pray with you. Is there one in the room? I'm going to believe then that everyone in the room is a believer. Jesus told us that this is how we would know, the world would know that we were His disciples. That we would love. Church, if you're here today and you say, Pastor, I have not been showing love, but you want that to change today, then I want you to follow in what this young man did. I want you to find a place right now in this altar to pray. Get up and move right now. You say, well, Pastor, normally you just have me raise my hand and you pray for me. Well, that's not what we're doing today. If you say, I need to show love, I want you to get on your face before God right now. Let's pray.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You've been so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You've been so good to me. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You've been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You've been so, so good to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yes. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You've been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You've been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, your love. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Amen. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Amen. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love.
If you're praying, I want you to just continue doing so. Don't let me bother you. Church, I want to tell you something. The enemy is really good at what he does. I hate giving him credit, but he deserves it. I remember just a few weeks ago, we had a couple of families out because they were sick with COVID. And Christina and I sat in our driveway, and I said, babe, should we just go to having home church for a while and just live stream? I was scared. Luckily, I called a pastor of mine that I trust, and we talked for a little while, and he kind of talked me off the ledge, and I told Christina we're just going to have church. But guys, listen, when we came here 3 years ago, not to this building, but when we came to Lowell 3 years ago, God gave our church a mission. I want to remind you, in case you don't remember, what our mission statement is, that we're going to make Northwest Arkansas a better place to live by serving our community, loving our neighbor, and leading them to Christ. And last month when we drove down to Fayetteville to do the homeless ministry, I'll be honest, I was a little bit scared. I was like, I don't know the other churches that are ministering. I don't know whether they're being safe or not. Obviously, I know that the homeless that we're ministering to are probably not being safe in their daily lives. And I was like, we're asking our people to go and do this. Guys, I'm telling you right now, I'm about to get either real popular or real unpopular. We are not going to forsake our mission because of a disease. I don't think it's fake. I know that it's not fake. I know that it's real, and I know that it's dangerous, and I want you to keep yourself safe. But church, we're going to be the church that God has called us to be. Some of you who are on the live stream today haven't been able to be in a service for almost a year because you're scared. And I understand that. I get that. We're not going to be scared. I want to encourage you to be the church, whether it's online or whether it's coming together and setting up and tearing down, whether it's going and ministering to the homeless, whether it's buying gifts for people who aren't going to have a Christmas otherwise. I don't care what it is, church, we are going to be the church. Because if we're not, there's no reason for us to exist. If we're not going to love, Jesus said, this is how they will know you're my church. That you love in action. So we're going to love. We're going to fulfill our mission. And we're not going to be scared.